right, so the Lord's led me to give my testimony, and I believe that there's someone here that needs to hear it. So if I start fidgeting, kind of pacing around a little bit, like I said, bear with me. I'm a little bit nervous. But anyway, we'll start back when I was a little kid. When I was younger, like every child, you think your life's pretty normal. I thought my life was normal for a very long time until I realized that not everybody's lights got shut off 3-4 times a year. Not everybody got their water shut off and their gas shut off. And I don't know if you ever tried to take a cold shower in December, but you can't warm up. My parents were drug addicts. I grew up in poverty. I literally came from nothing. I can't express how much that's maybe played a factor in the rest of my testimony or the rest of my life. I was saved at a pretty young age. I like to think I was about 11 or 12. I used to read the Left Behind series, and there's a little prayer in it that is a salvation prayer, and I remember praying that when I was laying on a couch on April 17th when I was, like I said, 11 or 12. I'm not sure on the exact year. But I can't explain that euphoria, that walking on sunshine, that goosebump feeling that I got. And little did I know, in a few years, I would spend most of my life trying to find that again, trying to chase it. As I got older, I was about 14, 15 years old, I started to notice that I was being taken places, I guess you could call them drug houses, things like that. I was with my parents a lot, and like I said, they were drug addicts. And their marriage started to fall apart. And that also played a very big part in my life. At this point in time, I was at church every time the doors were open 4 or 5 times a week. I spent my time in God's house. I first heard the calling to preach when I was 14, 15 years old around this time. Shortly after that, my parents got divorced, and nobody cared about CJ. My mom was worried about her. My dad was worried about himself, and my sister was nowhere to be found. That's when everyone hears about the wrong crowd. Everybody's heard about it, no matter if you grew up in the 90s, 2000s, or the 60s, everyone's heard about the wrong crowd. And I started to hang out with the wrong crowd. I started to experiment with drugs when I was 15 years old. I became a daily marijuana user for the next 9 years. And I started when I was 15, and I started to do other things also. I spent a lot of my time, I wasn't going to school, I actually skipped a lot of school. I actually skipped more days than I attended in the 5 years of high school I had to go to, because I had to go back an extra year. And I was hanging out with my friends, and my friends didn't do anything wise. I spent a lot of time doing drugs, drinking, and criminal activities, because I wasn't very bright. And that all started to shape my daily life and everything about it. Like, it was just, that's all I did, that's all I planned for. And that's the life I led. When I was 17 years old, I contemplated suicide for the first time. And after my attempt, my sister calls me on the phone and tells me I'm going to be an uncle. And there was that euphoria feeling that I've been chasing once again. And everything felt okay. I'm not going to say I stopped using drugs, but I slowed down for a while. I didn't drink as much. And then, just like all feelings, the feelings started to fade away. I started, once again, criminal activities, drinking, drugs. The phrase, I've been there, I've done that. I've been there, I've done that. The list of the things I said I would never do slowly got smaller and smaller and smaller as time got by. Got to the point where I looked in the mirror and I just hated myself. I saw my father, and at the time that was awful. The first slide. I actually only added this slide because my wife hates this picture. And that's me as a super senior because I said I had to go back to school next year because I like to skip school and things like that. Like I said, it makes her upset. Next slide. This is what I looked like pretty much all the time. That's extracurricular activities right there that I shouldn't have been doing. It's a little, half of it's funny, but half of it's a little embarrassing, honestly, at this point in time in my life. And it's one of those pictures you wouldn't want to resurface if I ever tried to run for political office. I met Megan when I was 21 years old. Actually, I believe I was 20 years old. And we started dating when I was 21 years old. And I told myself I was going to change. I was going to come back off of everything that I've been doing. And everything kind of slowed down. I didn't do anything nearly as much. I was still a daily marijuana smoker. I still dabbled with other things from time to time. And I was searching for something. I felt so lost. And all this time I heard this little voice in the back of my head that was like, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. You know why you're here. What are you doing? Throughout the course of before we got together, I've been incarcerated, I've been arrested, and a few times I've overdosed and gotten alcohol poisoning from being an idiot. And I told myself that I was going to change when we got together, and I started to. And you go to the next slide. About 2 years ago, almost to the day, I believe, my wife told me that I had a choice to make. I had an ultimatum. I was either going to continue doing what I was doing and lose my family, or I could change. So I changed. I forgot a very major point in this. When I was 23, 22, my mama passed away. Before she passed away, she called me the night that she passed away. And I was too busy hanging out with my friends and getting high to answer the phone. At 11:30 at night, my mama's never called me at 11:30 at night. I saw it ring 6 times, went to voicemail. I chose not to answer the phone because I was too busy hanging out with my friends. And 8.5 hours later, I found out she died. And that was when my bottom had a basement. And I was there, I was hanging out. And it sucked, honestly. Then I started to get clean. And the first 30 days of getting clean is detox. Everything's coming out of my body. All the emotions that I've been suppressing for 9 years of my life were coming to the surface. And I didn't know how to act. I didn't know what emotions were because I haven't had to experience them for almost a decade. 4 months into getting clean, my cousin Dale passed away. And that is me giving his service at his funeral. And as I'm standing there, this is right before everything starts to kind of happen. We did some songs and I gave a message, and as I'm standing there looking out on a crowd of people, it was like that voice in my head that's been kind of whispering as I was doing bad things for a long time was like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be doing things like this, delivering a message to people that are hurting, trying to lead people. And I was overwhelmed with emotion, so right after the funeral ended, I ran outside. And I didn't run because obviously I don't do a whole lot of running, but I moved quickly outside. And I was the first one outside, and I started crying. And I don't like to cry in front of people. I do my best not to. And I knew that I had about a minute and a half to figure out what the voice was talking about and to deal with my emotions. And I knew at that moment that when I was called to preach when I was 14, it was coming back up. And that's what I needed to do. So the next, I believe 2 or 3 weeks after that, yeah, go ahead, you're good. I started talking to Brother Jeff, and I got licensed to become a pastor through Lifeline Baptist Church. And that right there is one of the proudest moments of my life. answered my calling. 8 months after, 6, 7 months after that, my marriage started to go through a rocky patch, and I was once again given a choice of I could either A, go back to how I used to be, or B, stay on the path. And it was a hard choice to make. I'm not going to say it's easy, because it's not, especially when you've had a life like I've led or like I've had. But I stayed the course, and there's the blessing I got because of it. And I truly believe that. I'm not just saying this to blow smoke. I truly believe that is the blessing I was given for staying the course, for staying the path. And from 15 years old to in a week and a half, or 2 weeks, what's today's date, 21st, 19th? In 16 days, I will be 2 years clean. And next slide, that's what I have to show for it. And that's awesome. And that's all I got.